So this is the oxygen concentrator. This is a 5-liter machine. We have machines that go to 10 as well. So this is the Perfecto. Other 5 liters we have are Everflow, Perfecto, 525 DS, which is a DeVilbiss machine. So those are all 5 liters. 10 liters we have are intensity 10s and platinum 10s. We do have some 8s, intensity 8s, but we don't use too many of those because they're out and about. And anything over 8 to 10 liters, those are PSI is 20 PSI, which is only good for like trach patients and stuff like that. But we still use those on patients who are higher liter flows. So these machines are very basic, very quick and easy to operate. And it has to be because you're dealing with elderly patients, patients who are health compromised. So you don't want something that's going to be too elaborate and too involved. So on and off switches here. Little button here is the reset button. This works like a circuit breaker in your house. So if the power goes out and the machine's running, it's going to possibly kick this breaker. When the power comes back on, the machine may not turn on. They're going to hear that alarm. So if that happens, they want to shut off, power comes back on, the machine doesn't come on, you're going to tell them to just hit the reset button, just like you would in a circuit breaker at home if it trips. That should start the machine up. Okay. This is where the tubing gets connected. The black knob here is the liter flow control. It'll adjust the little black ball you will see in a second up to between 1 to 5 liters per minute. On the side of every machine, we created these backdoor COVID. We created these manuals for each machine because back then we really couldn't go into patients' houses very much. So there's step-by-step instructions with a YouTube link for an instruction video on how to use the concentrator, how to use each specific brand concentrator, how to use the portable tanks, the backup tanks, all those type of things. Also pictograms for each one of these as well I did so that a patient could, if they don't have the internet, they can look at each picture and follow step by step on the picture. So this is on every concentrator for patients so that they always have written instructions and access to video instructions for how the equipment works. Manufacturer specs say 87% and above is good for a machine, but Walnut's policy is 90. Anything that's 90% and above is good to stay in the patient's home. If it's 89 or below, we take it out. So our standard is a little higher than the manufacturer standards for when we leave a concentrator in. Okay. Humidifier bottle will attach here. We'll show you that. So the next thing I'm going to show you how the guys put the tubing on. Very basic. Keep in mind, a patient can only have up to 50 feet of oxygen tubing. If you get over 50 feet, that impacts the PSI level and it affects how the machine's going to operate. The patient's not going to actually get their 3 liters per minute that they're prescribed. So they stopped making 20-footers for some crazy reason. So now we use 25-foot and a 14-foot. So that gives us 39 feet. And then we add a 7-foot nasal cannula onto it, and that gives us our 46 feet. So we stay under 50 feet. If a patient says, I can't reach everywhere I need to go with that, we move the concentrator to a more central location in the house to get them wherever they need to go. Sometimes it's very hard to do when a patient has a big house, but we do the best we can to get in. Sometimes that situation, they just kind of have to adapt their lifestyle in the home a little bit to get where they need to go. Okay? You see the ashtrays and the patient admits I'm a smoker. We have to put these fire-safe valves on the machines. So what these do is they will snuff out a fire before it becomes a big catastrophe. It will not, however, stop a patient from burning up their face in a fire. So the way this works is the guys would take tubing off, then we connect this fire-safe valve. There's charcoal in here, so when a fire comes through the line, and hits this, it's going to make like a hissing sound, and it's going to snuff out the fire because it seals the line. It melts the charcoal or whatever, and it just blocks the line so that it can't go further down the way. So that's put on 1 foot from the machine, and then also at the nasal cannula. The guys would take out the regular connector. They would install the fire safe valve on the end of the nasal cannula, and then at the tubing. Why that's important, and why you have to have 2 on there. If Mr. Smith is wearing his oxygen, he's smoking a cigarette, he puts the cigarette here, it gets real short, it hits the nasal cannula here, it's going to immediately flash because the oxygen, remember, 90% as opposed to 21%. The combustible trigger goes up once you start hitting 23% oxygen. And the higher the oxygen percentage, the higher the risk of fire is. So you cannot have a fire without the triangle of combustion. So the triangle of combustion is fuel, heat, and oxygen. So we got the oxygen, we got the fuel, which is your body, your clothing, your couch, your bed, your recliner, all that stuff is your fuel, and the heat is cigarette. So that happens, it's going to flash in their face, it's going to burn their face all the way to the tubing, up over the ears, down through here. And if they do not have the fire safe valve on it, that fire is going to burn all the way down here. So if it's laying on their lap, now all their clothes are now on fire. And it'll hit here, and it's going to snuff it out. Okay? So what this does, it prevents it from going all the way to the machine, and then you catch the machine on fire, which now the machine's on fire, which is going to likely lead to a bigger house fire. Patients who smoke in bed, they fall asleep with their nasal cannula on. The whole bed goes up if they don't have fire safe valves in it. So very important that the guys find out if a patient's a smoker, and we put these on. So anytime a patient's given fire safe valves, it's also noted on a delivery note, so it prints out every time the patient's a smoker. I'll make note, patient's a smoker, warn of dangers on every visit. And the guys have to document every time they go and say, warn of the dangers of oxygen, using oxygen while smoking. That's very, very important. There have been companies who document 20 times. Went to the patient's house, Mr. Smith is smoking with his oxygen on. That 21st time, they didn't tell him, do not use your oxygen while you're smoking. 2 days later, the patient smoked with their oxygen, burned themselves up, either passed away or was severely injured. Family called an attorney. They sued the company, and where the company says, well, we told them 20 times. It's right here, it's documented. 20 times we told them, do not smoke. But the last time you were there, you didn't tell him. He has memory issues. It's your responsibility to remind that patient not to smoke with the oxygen and document so it's on their copy. So to help with that, that delivery note prints out on not only our copy, but the patient copy. So that's to help cover us that it is on a written form that we give them every single time we visit, that they're not supposed to smoke with the oxygen. Okay? Reset button, which works like a circuit breaker. Your traffic signal, green is good, yellow is like there might be an issue, 15 minutes or longer, we can swap out the machine. Red light, of course, is there's a power outage or the machine's completely shut down. Liter flow control is here. Patients need to stay on the prescribed liter flow, do not go above or below. And on the back is the filter, needs cleaned once a week. soap and water, smack against the wall outside to get the dust out, or a vacuum hose, just fine. And on the side is instruction manual with video links and pictogram instructions for the concentrator. Okay. This is where the machine pulls the air in. So, little brief history why patients need oxygen. Right now we breathe 21% oxygen out of room air. The rest of it is made up of nitrogen, carbon dioxide, other trace gases. So what a concentrator does, it sucks in room air through this filter in the back. There's sieve beds inside this machine with a compressor. So the air that's coming in through the machine is filtered through the sieve beds. The compressor works to do its magic, and it puts out at least 90% oxygen through this port. That's why the patients get the increased oxygen levels in their blood. That's why if they're 85%, they qualify for oxygen because they're not at 90 or 89. When they put the oxygen on, that helps bring, because now they're going from 21% oxygen to at least 90% oxygen. That has increased their oxygen level in their blood. And that's what helps them feel better to be able to do the things they need to do. There's a minimum line and a maximum. I always tell people, just go minimum because you have to dump it out anyways. So if you're filling up to the max, your machine's never going to use all that in one day. It's just adding some moisture to the line. So they can save themselves some water by just using the minimum line because you're supposed to dump it out and put new in anyways. The bottle should be cleaned every 48 hours. Soap and water, rinse it out. We usually give 2 bottles so they can rotate the bottles through. If they want to, use it that way. Okay. So when you're putting a humidifier bottle on, in the back of the machine, when you open up this compartment, this is the internal filter. Patients should never touch this. This is FYI. But there is a hidden hose inside the machine. So I'm going to just put this right back on the machine. I'll make sure I don't unplug it this time. Okay, so once again, the bottle's going to sit right in here. Now this has a little threaded knob at the end. And this has got your female connector here. So the female connector is going to connect to the O2 output. And now we're going to use the wing nut and we're going to screw this onto the water bottle. You can see the water start to bubble. Yeah. So now you think, okay, they're good to go. The machine's putting out oxygen and they're getting some humidification in the line. That may not always be true because maybe this isn't threaded right or the ball's not threaded right. So a good test for the patients is if they have this in their nose all the time, it's hard to tell if it's coming out or not, especially on 2 liters or less. So they may have a hard time. So you can tell them, hold it up to your ear. It's a little more sensitive at your ear to feel it, or go get a glass of water. So you get a glass of water, they can just stick their nose piece in the glass of water and it's bubbling, then they know they have oxygen coming through their nose piece, they're good to go. That's a little bit of a hassle sometimes, so go get a glass of water. So I always tell people, when you put your water bottle on, every day, just take, this way they can keep their nose piece in, take off the tubing, stick your finger here. You hear that puff? That's the back pressure, because I'm preventing the oxygen from coming out. It's making that puff. So you know I've got the oxygen coming through. Okay? So now let me show you what happens when the bottle is not threaded properly. And it's just a fraction of a turn. Okay? Water's still bubbling. Now if I stick this nasal cannula in the glass of water, it's still bubbling. So it just, like I said, it's very sensitive. So it's, some people don't like to put it on real tight. Now you can see there's no water coming through, no air coming through. So they know that's a good trigger. If they call you, I'm not getting any air out of my bottle, well, that's a good way for them to check it, is by taking this off. Now I take this tubing off. This is a real quick and easy way. Instead of getting a glass of water, real quick, easy way, take the tubing off. I'm holding my finger there. There's no back pressure. There's no puff sound. So that's your key. I don't have the bottle floated correctly. And then you just I always tell people, take the bottle completely off, the lid completely off, put it back on, and now we're back to air coming out. So that's a very quick, easy trick over the phone. Saves guys call outs in the middle of the night sometimes. When I was a driver, I had to call at 3 o'clock in the morning because somebody was changing their water bottle at 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, why are we changing your water bottle at 3 o'clock in the morning? This is the time I get up for the day. And you have to understand you're dealing with elderly people that maybe that was their lifestyle. Maybe they worked at 6 a.m. or 5 a.m. and that's just, for 40 years, that was their time. And that's when they got up, So, but that's a quick, easy way to, I guess not a dire emergency if the water bottle's not working, because all they have to do is take the tubing off the bottle, disconnect it off the port, and just go back to using it without the water bottle. So it's not an emergency. They have to have a water bottle replaced or anything like that. It's just quick, easy. Take the bottle off, connect your tubing to the machine. Okay. This stuff is the more important stuff, and we'll hit the other stuff again. 2 prongs in the washer, and on the tank you have 2 small holes and the big hole. So the washer is going to fit over top of the big hole, and the little prongs are going to go fit in the small holes. It's very important that if somebody brings in a regulator and it's missing these prongs, that we give them another one. Every gas has its own connection style. So nitrogen, instead of having 2 pronged holes here, they might be offset, one at the bottom, one at the top. What's happened is there's been deaths at nursing homes because nitrogen was delivered. Somebody tried to hook up an oxygen gauge to a nitrogen tank, thinking that something's wrong. They don't think, so they get a pair of pliers and they snap off one of these connections for oxygen. So they think they're putting oxygen on them. Now they've connected a damaged valve regulator onto a nitrogen tank. And normally this would not fit on a nitrogen tank, just like a nitrogen gauge wouldn't fit on this tank. So what's happened is they've corrupted a oxygen regulator, stuck it on the nitrogen, turn on for the patient, leave the patient alone, come back, patient's died. Because nitrogen can't kill you after if you have to. You'll be able to see when it kind of finds the groove, and then you just tighten the key on the side. Tank opens up, righty tighty, lefty loosey. You open the tank, your gauge goes up to 2,000. 2,000 is a full tank. That's based off of our elevation above sea level. So depending on what your elevation is, that PSI of 2,000 would be different. Maybe it'd be lower, it'd be higher. It just depends on your elevation. So roughly 2,000 pounds of PSI is a full tank for us. And the liter flow is controlled by this knob on the side. And these are all continuous flows. So these regulators go from 0.5 to 1, 1.5, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 8. Oh, I actually grabbed the high liter flow. That's 15 liters per minute. This tank on 15 liters per minute would last you probably 40 minutes, if that. Okay? So that is just your standard oxygen regulator to an oxygen tank. Now, this is the Easy Pulse. Easy Pulse 5 only goes to 5 liters. We do have a few, they're called bonsais, that go to 6. So the guys know if a patient is on 6, they have to have a bonsai. So the only thing in the system now is oxygen conserver. So if you pick that, the guys will look at the liter flow and know which one they need to give. We don't have a lot of people on 6 liters that are able to use a B tank, because if you're on 6, your O2 stats aren't very good in the first place, so getting a pulse isn't really going to help you a whole lot. So these are pretty rare to use. So same concept, 2 small holes in the washer hole, and you have the 2 prongs in the washer. Same thing, this goes down over the top. You'll feel it find the holes, and you tighten it up. Okay. So now you can see the gauge shows in the red that it's empty. But once you turn the tank on, and I tell people 1 turn's enough, because if you turn and turn and turn, people have a tendency to get confused on when to shut it off. So now if you only open it 1 turn, you know 1 turn turns it off. Okay. So now, obviously, when we turn this one on, you heard the air come out. You don't hear anything come out of this one. Now I said on 2, 3, your initial puff of air, but now it's not going to puff, because this only gets activated by inhalation. So for this to work, you have to breathe in through your nose. And that's where a lot of people have trouble with. Sometimes they can't breathe hard enough to activate it. But the cannula just sticks on here. This piece goes in. When you breathe, you can hear that click. That gives the patient the oxygen. So now, if you have people who are mouth breathers, it's not activating. But as soon as I take a quick breath through my nose, it's going to give you that puff. Nothing. So that's very important, and that's why people don't get, is you have to breathe through your nose. Now, of course, the faster you breathe, you know, the quicker your tank's going to go, because it's giving more doses. So on 2 liters, a B tank should last about 5 hours, 5.5 roughly. Keep in mind that is just an estimate, because some people breathe slower, so they may get a little longer. Patients who breathe faster are going to get a little less. And of course, the higher the liter flow, the shorter the tank duration is going to last. Most of our tank patients are in that 2 to 3 liter per minute range. Those are the ones who use the B tanks the most. You do have some on 4 and 5, but the bulk is 2 to 3 liters. A lot of times they'll stick to the side of the empty tank. So they take their regulator off, set this tank down over here, it's sticking there until it warms up and that falls off. And then they go to put this on their new tank, and the air's blasting out, and they're like, what's wrong with it? And that's when you ask them, you have the prongs in, you see the washer above the prongs. There should be a black rubber with a gold rim washer right above these prongs. And if they say no, go look on your empty tank, go look around where you keep your tanks, because it's either stuck to the side of the tank or fell off somewhere. If they can't find it, then they need to have another washer sent out. Many times that will solve the problem. They just have to get it off the other tank or check on the floor around it. Another trick is, if it leaks, you have it in correctly, the washer is on, and it still leaks. It's in the prongs are in the holes, it's tight, and it's leaking. The washer's bad. But the biggest trick of all is to just take the washer off. I don't know why it works, but you flip it around, the washer the other way, and it seals it fine. It'll work. It leaks. You have a closet with coats and boots and shoes and whatever else you keep in a closet. So now you've got oxygen-rich atmosphere that went from 21% up to probably well into the 80s, if not higher, percentage of oxygen. All it will take is coming in, flipping that light switch on. Now you got a flash of, it's not an explosion, it's just flammable. So now you've got the triangle of combustion there, and all that clothing closet is now on fire. Same thing goes with if patients are putting tanks in their car, they should always crack their window open about 1 inch. Doesn't matter if it's wintertime, summertime, whatever, the window should be open about 1 inch so that it gets in natural air, which is 21%. So if they're using their tanks in the car, it's not sealed up in the car and filling up with a higher concentration of oxygen. Trunk, definite no-no. If you see a patient at any of the stores loading tanks into the back of the trunk, you stop them immediately and tell them not to do that, because if a tank is in the trunk, rolls around, for some reason they slam on the brakes, rolls around, pops the valve open, you got the radio blasting, they don't know it's hissing back there. Now you got the closed atmosphere environment, oxygen-enriched levels now. Simple as putting on your brake light. A little spark from that could ignite your trunk with oxygen in it. So those are things to just keep in mind if you see patients doing those type of things. We should definitely be warning them about. And that's all covered when the patients are set up, but patients don't always listen very well. So if you see that happening outside your office, especially in Richland, you can see them going out to their car easier than what the girls here can. Definitely go out and say, hey, you don't want to put those in your. Okay. So the home fill system, you can only get a home fill if the patient is ordered a conserving device. Okay. So on all oxygen setups, you get the information from the doctor's office. We should be asking right up front, is the patient eligible to use a conserving device? The reason that's important because not everybody can tolerate on-demand puff, which I'm going to show you here in a second with the portable oxygen. If the patient's on 3 liters, they have to use a Perfecto. They have to has to be the Perfecto concentrator. It's the only one that's compatible right now with home fill system. Okay. If the patient's on 4 or 5, they would have to use a Platinum 10. Okay, because there needs to be 2 liters worth of oxygen available to fill this tank. So 3 liter patient gets the Perfecto. That gives you 2 liters left over to fill the tank. Now, even though we're going to give them a Platinum 10 if they're 4 or 5, 5 is the max the patient can be on to use the home fill system. The system's not built to fill it fixed with that button. Even though there's enough headroom as far as the liter flow to do it, it's not compatible. Okay. The way this works, same thing, concentrator goes on. Sometimes you'll get the call, my tanks aren't filling. One of the reasons is they might have turned their machine up above 3. If this machine's above 3, there's not enough room to put 2 liters of oxygen in per minute into this tank. So that's one of the quick questions. My home fill tanks aren't filling. What's your machine set at? Is it on 3 liters or less? I've had patients, no, it's on 4. Turn it down to 3 and start over. And then it usually works. Okay? So that's set on 3. When the patient is ready to fill, all they have to do is you have this gold port on the side. You gotta make sure the tank is closed. This tank must be at least half empty. Okay? If it's more than that, there's not enough room for the pressure to build to fill the tank. So at least half empty, preferably completely empty. When it's completely empty, it should take about 1 hour and 15 minutes to fill one of these small tanks. We do have D tanks, which are 460 liters, I believe. So it's a little bit bigger tank. Those are compatible with the home fill. E tanks are not. We cannot fill E tanks on the home fill system.
So B tanks are compatible.
B's and D's.
B's and D's.
Yep. A D tank will take over 3 hours to fill. So imagine if you had to fill an E tank, it's going to take you about 6 or 7 hours to do that. They do have them available, but we don't do them because they're just too long to take.
B tanks take approximately 2 hours, you said?
B's about an hour and 15 minutes when they're empty. D's about 3 hours. So when a patient's ready to fill, what's nice about these is they can run around, do all their stuff. They come home, they take their tank, they come over to here, and just push it down. It's that easy. And it clicks in place. And then the only other thing they have to do is turn it on and walk away. Lights on here, green, yellow, and red, just like the concentrator. Green means it's full. Yellow means O2 below normal. So right now the machine's warming up. It takes a few minutes for the oxygen to cycle through this top part as well. And once it starts to reach the O2 level that's necessary to fill, it's going to flip to green here in the middle, and it's going to make like a churning sound. It's going to be like you hear the motor working. It's pumping the oxygen from the machine into the tank. When it is full, it will stop filling the tank, and the patient just has to light up full. The patient just has to come over and take it off. So when that shows it's full, the patient should turn off the machine, and then all they have to do is pull down on this coupler, take the tank off.
Will it stop on its own when it's full?
It will stop on its own when it's full. So when it's full, you take this off, it's not going to be blasting air out in your face. So the tank just has to be less than half full, preferably empty, and the tank has got to be closed. If this is open, what do you think is going to happen? The air is going to come in through here, and it's not going to come down here. It's going to go back up through the valve and out the bottom. So that's how home fills work.